I am an African woman. I am from Nigeria, and I speak Igbo as a dialect. So I'm an Igbo woman, a very proud one at that.
So I was born here in England, Leicester, but my mom is a Filipino. So I'm a mixed heritage, half Filipino, half English.
So I would probably, to answer what my heritage is, I would say my heritage is I'm Hindu, uh, and I'm not, I would say, a very religious person, but no, I do practice my Hinduism. I do go to temples, and we practice at home as well Hinduism. I do believe in, but I also respect other culture and other religions as well.
I'm Filipino. I come from the Philippines. So both my parents are Filipino.
So I'm a Muslim, born a Muslim, a Sunni Muslim, originally from the Gambia, West Africa. So African by descent. Tribe dates back to the Mandinka tribe or the Great Mandinka tribe of Mansa Musa. So that's my understanding of heritage.
I am African, West African from the Gambia. We call it the smiling coast of West Africa because of its warm, friendly people. So there you go. I'm African origin, Black African.
So I'd say you could define my heritage as, first and foremost, a British Asian, a British Indian. I see heritage as where I've come from and what's led me to be here right now. So what's the legacy behind me? And I think you could say African because my grandparents came from Africa to England, so Nairobi. The other side, my grandparents came from, well, still are in Punjab, so you could say I'm Punjabi. My mother tongue is Punjabi, and I speak it as well as, of course, English and East Midlands slang. So that's part of my heritage as well.
I'm classed as dual, mixed, whatever category people want to put me into, but my heritage is white British and Afro-Caribbean.
First of all, my name is Godric Ejimadu Okoli. My title is Omenka Afronanya. That is one who does what people see.
I came to study. I got a scholarship to study international tourism. See how I've diverted from tourism to nursing. It's a country of opportunities. So when I came, the scholarship finished. I applied, got it, came here, and I thought I'm not going back. This is home, England. So I stayed on. I got married, had a baby, settled here, and then thought I'd study nursing.
My mum is first generation British. So she was born and raised in Plumstead, actually, because her mum and dad came from Africa, Nairobi, and it just so happened that we already had family living in Plumstead at the time, so that's where my mum was born, and that's where my grandparents were spending a lot of time because they had family there as well. But then Leicester became the place again. Is because of affiliations with the textile industry, and a lot of my aunties and the generation before me had many skills in the textile industry.
It's only me. I came in here as a student during the mid-70s, and we worked as a hotel worker. And then at first we went to Turkey, and then I moved to Lowestoft, and that's where I met my husband. And then we moved to Leicester, and we have 2 children, and they both grown up with their own families. And I used to work with the social services.
Well, we came to Leicester for greener pastures. Before we moved to Leicester, we were living in Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. And when we moved to Leicester, we didn't know anybody or any relatives at all. But I suppose one of the core reasons that people move, whether it's from, from one city or another within the UK or from Nigeria to come to the UK at all, is because we're all seeking greener pastures, hoping to have better than our parents had, hoping to give our children better than we had. So we moved to Leicester for better employment and for better housing opportunity.
Well, I was born here already, but my mum moved here because she met my dad. So simply, she just came over to start a new life in England rather than in Philippines and started a family here.
I arrived in Leicester or UK in 88. Yes, 88. It's a long time ago. I got married and came. So my husband's, he's originally from Kenya. And his family came to Leicester. I think, no, they came to Birmingham first and then Leicester, settled down in Leicester since 1973. We got married in 87 in India as he was visiting India, and we got married there. I arrived in UK in 88.
Wow. I first lived in America, where I studied. My father studied in England, University of Buckingham, loved the English educational system. So he decided to take me out of America, send me to the Gambia in West Africa for some good African discipline, which worked. And then came here in 2002, did my college in Canterbury, Kent. Was meant to stay in the South, but my aunt, I applied to Loughborough University and Leicester, University of Leicester, came to the open day, didn't like it, but she forced me to come here. Ever since 2004, fell in love with it.
I do consider Leicester to be my home. I consider it to be my safe place, my place where I can feel most comfortable. And a lot of that is because of, my background being here, as I say, education, work, my network of, being in the creative sector and as an artist. It's really, a strong point when you've got a network of people that you know and trust and who accept you for your background and the work that you do. So kind of Leicester's the place that has accepted me in the work that I do.
The Gambia is my home, or will always be home. As a matter of fact, just came back from the Gambia 5 months ago, and I'll be going again the next few days, once the lockdown situation eases. But Leicester is definitely in my top 3 homes. I have another destination in the Middle East that I visited for some educational activities, and I was thinking I wanted to move there because it was just very beautiful, Abu Dhabi to be specific. But Leicester is definitely, I would say, my 3rd home.
I've never lived anywhere else. So I say earlier, born here in Leicester, and over the years, now I consider the community that I'm in, is sort of quite a lot of it is sort of an extended family, because we've grown having my own children and them having children. It's like, because I've always been involved with young people, they've sort of came into the groups that we've worked with over however many years, and you do become a part of that old community, which then comes a tad of a family. I believe that. I strongly believe that, actually.
You will consider Leicester home because this is where you live. And so you still feel that, kind of protectedness about it. This is my home. But I tell you what, Amanda, home is Nigeria. No matter what, when I go home, when I arrive, despite the struggles back home, despite the strives, despite what people are going through back home, once you come down at Lagos or Abuja airport, there is that massive sigh of relief. Home sweet home. And it is home sweet home because you get all the natural things to eat, nothing genetically modified. If you have fish, it is fresh fish, and you can taste, the goodness of it from the fresh water. I'm in particular from the riverine area. The River Niger goes right across my village, so you have fresh fish still alive and, wriggling in its naturalness. So home sweet home, you eat. When you have mango or pineapple at home, you can smell it. It's pure freshness with all the natural goodness. But yes, I consider Leicester very much home, having been here for over 10 years now, no thereabouts. So Leicester is very much home.
This feels so much like Gambia for some reason. Leicester is multicultural. You see all sorts. You see it's the Indians, the black community, the African Caribbean Center, Melting Road. You know, it feels so home. I go to the festival, Melting Road, the Diwali, and celebrate and dance with them. So it just gives me warmth. And I tell my mom in Africa, I say, I don't miss home because every ingredient I need is in Leicester. I go to your supermarket, I can buy all my veggies, all my African things, raw mangoes, okra, big peppers. You know, you go to other cities in England, you struggle to see such things. You come to Leicester, it's easy peasy. Melton Road is home. You go there, they're like, I see them, they look Indian. They tell me, I'm African. I'm like, how comes? I'm from Uganda, I'm from Kenya. Oh my God, we are family. So it's home.
Yes, I do, because I think I spent more years in Leicester than in India, because I was only 19 when I got married. So yeah, I would kind of say like I spent my most of the life now in Leicester. Got my own family here, extended family here. So yeah, Leicester is home to me. I mean, before, if you asked me this question, maybe 20 years ago, I would kind of say, oh yeah, it's my second home.
Leicester is my home. At least our people say that wherever you are, that is where you open and close your doors and windows. Ebonyebi, Konawachi. Where you are, you have to mend it. So I consider Leicester to be my home.
I'd say many people know that the British Indian community is well represented in Leicester. I think it's a well-known thing that Leicester, when you come to Leicester, you will meet my community in a big way. And I think people appreciate it, they understand it, and they love it. In the majority of people, I'd say, across the UK. You know, people know the Golden Mile as being the road for my culture to be celebrated. For people of other cultures will come to eat our food, to you know, see our clothing, try it on, buy it hopefully. And I think we in Leicester, we have a lot of respect on the whole for other cultures, including mine.
Normally, when you tend to associate Filipinos, you think NHS. A lot of them are doctors or nurses, or very well caring. So I think the Leicestershire public do recognise Filipinos. Sometimes they might get confused with different Asian ethnicities, but I think we're well understood and people know like what we represent and who we are in some way.
I think that Gambia is a tiny country in West Africa. We are a population of over 2 million. That is like one city in England, or even not one city in England. So we tend to see a struggle in people even knowing the name Gambia. When I say I'm from Gambia, they're like, oh, Zambia. I'm like, no. Gambia. So I'm like, West Africa, near Senegal, Ghana. Oh. Some pretend to get it. Some do actually get it. Oh, your president, ex-president, this, oh, I'm like, yeah. And British tourists go to Gambia, tourism. So that is selling us out. But in terms of everyone knowing Gambia, I don't think so in Leicester, because I see even at work, where are you from, Gambia? No, Zambia. Oh, Zambia. No, Gambia. Where is that? I have to pull my phone out, look at us. We're a dot on the map.
I think in most ways, but obviously, generally, they won't think us as a Filipino. They know we're from Asia. And it's up to us to explain where we come from and introduce our cultures and, you know, so, because even in the Philippines, when we were little, if we see a white person, we thought you're American. So, I won't be, think if they don't think that I'm a Filipino. It's up to us to explain to them where we come from.
So culture, it would be. I mean, if it's culture in terms of the religious side, so festivities. Well, okay, I'm using another word now, but the two Eids we have, Eid al-Fitr, when we celebrate the end of the blessed month of Ramadan, next week Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or Eid al-Adha, when we celebrate the life of Prophet Abraham. So all of those religious cultures and understanding, which some of it ties into some of the Christian and Jewish religions as well, I think, yes, there is a good understanding and there's an openness to it. So, for example, public holidays for some employees, which is good. School breakout for some of the kids as well. The transportation network as well. Sometimes I think it can be a bit accommodating. And for example, getting a permit from the council to pray at the park, right? So I think that if that doesn't show you a good understanding, I don't know what does.
Well, I won't say yes, I won't say no. Because we have kept on the tradition of inviting the mayor of Leicester or his representative in all our events. Yet, I have not seen the Leicester City Council, I have not seen them partner with us as they should.
That is tricky question. Yes, it's celebrated very well. Whether it's understood by other culture or other communities is answer. There is no right or wrong answer, because it's. I think it's understood by some people or some community, but there are like still handful of community who don't understand the culture, maybe because they've not been exposed to the festivals or the culture. So it's not about they don't want to. Sometimes I know I sort of feel depends on what part of the Leicester you go. If you're talking about sort of certain county part of Leicestershire, then there is awareness is not there, and almost like as a like sort of from our dance school we do live a lot of workshops, dance workshops, and sometimes we go to county or certain schools and we get questions, are you just arrived from India or did you just flee from India? And it's like that kind of thing that oh, do you really live in UK or do you really live in Leicester? They get surprised by that Indian people do live in Leicester. So I think because certain communities not been exposed.
I've experienced more stereotypical racism, if that makes sense. So like stereotypes that occur with Asians. I think my mum has experienced it quite a bit since she's moved here, but not as much now. I remember her telling me when she first moved here. So we lived, not where I live now, but in another part of Braunston. Back then she experienced quite a bit of Asian like stereotypes and racism simply because she couldn't speak much English. She was new to the country, so she didn't really know what was going on. And I think that's why the public like recognized that and took advantage of that.
My husband has been, stopped a few times, sometimes for no obvious reasons. As we all know, statistics is showing it's not just talking about racism or saying that I've experienced racism, but the wider research is showing, obviously that the people from the black or the black minority community are more stopped and searched, sometimes for no obvious reasons. I personally have experienced racism in the course of my training and at work sometimes. But what happens with institutional racism is that it's so subtle that if you are not aware of what racism is, if you're not aware of someone actually being racist to you, you can just pass unnoticed. But despite how subtle it was in my own case, especially during training, and at some point when I had a particular manager, it was there right in your face, and I know that it was there. And then you read books like Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paolo Ferreri, and where he talks about theorizing oppression, and you try and understand better what's subtle, how subtle sometimes racism can be. And I've felt some of those and I've experienced them. But what I did with them was I tried to turn it around so that I can become a better person. Challenged it when it was appropriate to challenge it, also in a very subtle way. Because what tends to happen sometimes is you want to challenge things, but if you don't go through the appropriate channel, you could then come across as the person who is obviously making a mountain out of a molehill. Because the racisms that I have experienced are so subtle, people don't see them. And so if you maybe put in a complaint or raise a voice, they say, oh, she's shouting, when really that is not the case.
Growing up in Leicester back in the 60s, it was a very white city because it wasn't just areas then. Even though I was born in Highfields, I don't remember it because my mum left there when I was 2, and we moved to areas where it was very, very white dominated. I didn't understand that a lot of it was racism as a young girl until I got quite a bit older. And racism, a lot of it did come from adults, even teachers. So yeah, it was quite severe.
Myself, I will say institutional racism. Because I had a job at an estate agent, I'm not going to mention the name, in here, in Leicester. I was more qualified than the one that got the job. I was longer there. She was younger. She came in 2 months. And the other one that was replaced as a property manager left. So I was meant to step in to take that role. But it got given to her. From what I hear say, it wasn't directed at me. I felt bad. I felt awful about that happening. But what I was told is the clients, she would represent the clients more. The clients will be more warmed up to her in terms of the way she talks and that. My accent was stronger than this. So I felt like that's not cool.
I think there's definitely racism in Leicester, but if it exists, I think it's hidden. It's not obvious unless you do get the one or two comments on the street, or you do get you get those looks or the stares, which do feel really obvious.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Leicester is part of the UK. Leicester is part of the world.
But there is still quite a large element of racism. But I think it's all cultures as well. I don't think it is just down to your typical white. I think the racism comes from across all cultures, and that is personal, seeing, hearing, and knowing it happens.
I think it's in the areas that are, well, that is my belief, that are still not exposed to other sides of Leicester. Because Leicester tend to have areas that are dominated by certain ethnic groups or certain cultures. Like Melting Road, the Evington area is dominated by Muslims or Asian community. Melton is the Indian community. So we tend to have few sectors. Like Leicestershire, Melton. When I went to Melton Road, I felt out of place. I love Melton Road, but I went on placement there at the hospital. Everyone tend to know each other, and they're all white, and I'm the black one there. I felt out of place, not because they made me feel out of place. I just felt I didn't belong.
I remember one time, this is a scenario, I went to a football match, just like a Sunday league match with my friends. I used to play in a Sunday league team. My black friend experienced some racism, as racism is still quite big in football. You see like UEFA Champions League still put in like say no to racism signs, so it's still not disappeared. But my friend, he was a black friend, got racial slurred at by another fellow opposition, and that was only a few years ago. So it may have changed now, but it's still not disappeared.
I think as time has progressed, racism has, I wouldn't say, I definitely wouldn't say disappeared. I'd say it has gone to behind the scenes in a way. So from the forefront, where people would have been outright racist to faces of my uncles and their parents, and now it's more in the background. Now it's kind of leaked its way into institutions, into workplaces, underneath the breath. So it's not as obvious, I'd say.
As Leicester's become more diverse and that we are living together, because of the movements around, and I do think it's part of my work, to be fair. That makes me a little bit luckier than another person because of the work I've always been involved with. I get to go out there and go to different communities and that, so and they get to know your face. I did have a lot of problems even from the black community. As stupid as it might sound, because of being a mixed race person, I got a lot of racism, not just from the white community, but I got a lot of it from the black community. But again, once people get to know you and you're working with them, it does start to break down the barriers.
Some of the local authorities, such as I work with, are now beginning to talk about it in their meetings. It's now in agenda for meetings, and they're talking about it. They have small subcommittees that talk about racism, and it's there at the forefront of it. So whether it's got better, it's difficult to say. But there is more awareness. People are talking, there is that discussion.
So with people speaking up more, people are getting to know about it and attitudes are changing. And then there is marriages between whites and black and Asian and all that. I think it has changed a lot. From when I moved to Baymonlee's area, that side of my area used to be rough. Not now. It's cool now. You see the few one or two people that do this, but it's calmed down a lot, I think.
I don't know, in some way, I think sometimes racism is through not understanding. And I think if a certain person is racist, whatever you do, whatever you explain, if some people don't want to change their attitude, I don't know what could you do, so.
I feel like if cultures don't mix, then the world's just not going to move on. Like I said, with BLM, there's been a lot of clashes between racism and the movement, but I feel like that kind of unites everyone, and I feel like it does unite a lot of nations to come together and support one ethnicity. And I feel like when we all gather together, we're quite strong, as in like when a whole different ethnicity join together, I feel like we're stronger than just being separate. For example, the whites and the blacks and the Asians. I feel like when we all unite, we're just as strong as we can be.
I think it's so important for cultures to get to know other cultures because at the end of the day, arguments and feuds and hatred is fueled by a lack of understanding. So, of course, if we don't understand a culture, it's going to be foreign to us, it's going to be alien to us, and we can't empathize with what we don't know. We can't begin to see it from their perspective if we haven't been in their perspective or if we haven't tried to learn their perspective. So I think for us all to get to know, to want to learn, to want to see life from the perspective of a culture is going to be beneficial across the board. Of course it is, because once we understand each other, we see where their difficulties lie. We see what their suffering is. We see how they view the world, and thus we can understand them better.
We as black and white have mixed, blended well with the Indians and the Diwali celebration and all that. I shop at Melton Road. But I think there's a little lack of their side accepting the rest of us. From my understanding, they think they own Leicester. You see someone who's been here 20 years, they don't speak proper English because they don't need to or they don't want to, right? Because they are happy in their close-knit communities. They feel safe that way. So they don't want to explore other areas or try to know about different cultures. I see it every day and I'm like, really, I'm trying with you, try with me. Get to know me. Get to know about the Gambia. Get to know about me. Because I'm trying about you.
I think we should definitely continue to do projects like this, where we allow the people from the cultures, from those parts of heritage to speak, hear it from the horse's mouth, hear it directly from those people, allow us to tell our story rather than, tell it for us. So I think having projects like this where we are given a voice, a direct voice, is very, very, very important to allow people to understand and really understand in an authentic way, what we'd like to say, what we'd like to see, what we'd like to share.
So, despite me saying that I think we're quite strong in Leicester with different ethnicities, there's still some improvements, I think. I feel like some ethnicities don't have events that they could represent. Some people may say it's slightly biased, like I keep saying, there's a Caribbean carnival, but then why is there not probably an African nation type of event, for example? So I feel like maybe the African community, for example, or even the Filipino community, we have a event similar to a carnival. It's called a Barrio Fiesta. So it's literally just a fiesta, festival in a park. They used to hold them in Leicester Abbey Park, but we stopped. So that's an example there. Maybe our Filipino community could reach out to the council to get it sorted, and then that will help allow the rest of Leicester go into that event like they do to the Caribbean Carnival.
I don't think it would completely go away because it's so ingrained in some people. They have imbibed it and they think it's the right thing to do. And they teach the same thing to their children. And so it's handed down from generation to generation. It becomes a vicious cycle. I don't think it could ever end, but it could reduce from the way people experience it because, as I said earlier, there is more awareness and there is now consequences, whereas many years ago, there were no consequences. I know that many years ago in Brixton area, they used to have things like no blacks, no dogs, and no Irish and things like that. But you cannot write that now and get away with it because there will be consequences. We're able to walk into restaurants and sit down and eat. You're paying with your money, whether it's cash or card, and I'm paying with mine. So you cannot ask me not to enter. If I can afford to shop in Harrods, I would walk into Harrods and shop, and you wouldn't stop me because of the color of my skin. So there is consequences now. And so people, once you report it, it would be followed up and there will be consequences. And that's, the way forward. That is the way to go forward. How many times have, black people, young, old, been killed during, stop and search in US and maybe even here, and it goes unreported, but there is consequences. And Floyd has made such a huge difference to what is going on now.
Education, sensitization, we always say that. Sensitize people, educate them from the grassroots. If you grow up in a household that they call black people names or they call white people names or Asian people names, you tend to think that's okay. That's kids. Kids learn behavior from parents. When I watch my child do something and I'm like, why you do that? Mommy, you did it. I'm thinking, oh my God, I need to behave myself. So we need education, massive, massive education.
We need somebody who's out there, that's strong enough to go and walk into those communities. I'd like to think that I could be that person, but I know I'm not. But I think the way it can be changed is that, the power of the radio, of the Mercury, of the government and whatever, to open their doors and, you know, ask these communities to come and start sharing with us their lives so we can understand it a bit more. Because we're all human, right? It's just different shapes and sizes and whatever, but it's just they need to come. You need somebody to go and say, come on out your door, like, let's meet, show us a bit about yourselves.